Alright, today I'm going to finally make a video I've been planning on making for a few years. So probably about 12 years ago or so. Might be even more, might be 14 years, might be 15 years, I can't remember exactly. I put together this duster. It was a normal, I believe, AMT kit. And I don't take the time to do something like this as often as I would like. But I really spent a lot of time on this thing. Even before I started painting it. I took a lighter to it, I dented it up. I would use small pieces of metal and, the heated up corner and sort of like just make a lot of these wild dents. The bumper got bent out as if it got caught up on a rock wall or something. A lot of crusty sort of rust belt, New England type rust on this thing. Evidence of having been hit, evidence of having hit other things, trim that's falling off, deep gouges where paint flakes and Bondo have come off, a trunk that's been broken into. There's actually coil springs sticking out. I made little tiny shavings of metal, of plastic. They look like metal, and there's little springs sticking out of the seat. That's based on my 68 Camaro that actually had that. Anyway, just ridiculous stuff. The missing door handle on the passenger side. I sort of was trying to make a more realistic version of like a Joe Dirt car, right? Joe Dirt was driving a Charger Daytona, which those were not as cheap and disposable as much as I love Dusters. 71 Duster, I mean, these things were everywhere back in the late 70s, early 80s. This was a very sort of disposable car. I mean, I think that's sad, but that was just the reality of it. I mean, fuselage body Imperials got thrown in junkyards left and right. So these things were just a cheaper version of that. As a Mopar fan, I'd love to have one of these, but again, I just love the idea of having a real... it takes more time to... I guess it takes more skill and patience in some ways to build a model perfect than this. This is more forgiving, but it's also time-consuming way beyond just taking your time and patiently putting a model together and, having the paint dry, having the clear coat dry, and not accidentally putting a fingerprint on it or having a hair get on it or whatever. This is a different sort of operation where you're, it's the idea is more like how realistic can I make all of this damage, the paint, the rust. I'm going to show you guys underneath. Again, if you've ever seen a car that's had a trunk broken into, this is kind of what it looks like. There's no trunk key. There's no key in the trunk. The key cylinder is gone. And there's a gouge where a crowbar would have dented up the back of the car. This fender right here has that big gouge, but also the bumper corner. I made it so that it looks like, again, somebody would have caught it on a rock wall. The way the bracing works on these underneath, see, it's somewhat realistic that only that corner would bend out because of the bracing. Whoops, I dropped the hood. But yeah, if you look at it underneath, the whole entire car, there's a lot of patina, there's a lot of, I added texture, crust, the mufflers. It's not just the paint. It's having the paint get all clumpy on purpose. Sprinkling in, you can even sprinkle in some, like sawdust or pencil shaving type stuff or whatever when it's wet to give it texture, and then paint over it again. Layering the paint too thick and then gouging into the bottom layer, but making sure to prime the bottom layer with reds and browns. And that way when you take a gouge out of the paint, it looks like the rust is coming through. So that's a part of it. Then putting the dirt on top of that, having the headlight looks like it's, beat up, and possibly this one burnt out. All those little things. This model is far from perfect, by the way. I'm not trying to brag and make it out like this is my best work. I enjoy doing this kind of stuff, and I think it's a a good example of how much fun you can have making just a beat up death trap looking car out of a scale model kit. I've done this also with an advanced design Chevy. I'll show you guys that later. Unfortunately, one of the axles broke on that in storage. Somebody bumped, somebody, almost definitely me. It got bumped, and so I gotta fix that. But yeah, if you look at the hoses, if you look at, I'm not saying the colors are perfect, but it's certainly more along the lines of what a car of this, caliber in terms of, the quality and everything else. I added the battery cable, by the way. Of course, you can probably pick up on that. I think I was planning on doing wiring on this, and I didn't. That would be fun to do the wiring on this. Mismatched oil cap, or like looks like it doesn't quite belong. There's one blue seat. The driver's seat is blue. The door panel on the driver's side is a beat up, all stained up burgundy. The rest of the car interior is white. So of course, realistically, having been to junkyards and seen what that looks like, I try to make the interior reasonably weathered. The glove box door, I made that so it looks like it's opened, like a glove box that won't latch, excuse me. We've all had one of those. It's a crank window duster. There's not much in here, but again, if you look at that little coil spring right there, that's a piece of plastic shaving. I can't get this thing to focus. I don't know if you guys can see that, but there's actually a little shaving of plastic that's actually, there's two of them, that's right, like springs coming up through the seat. I had that in my 68 Camaro. I legitimately had springs that were just poking out. I always drove that car with a couple of rolled up beach towels on the seat. And then eventually I got a race seat, and that seat went in the trash. But anyway, the all those little details. This is the underside of the hood. Once again, got multiple layers of paint. A lot of texture, as you can tell. It's not just the color I painted it, it's the texture. Holding on to old paints for years, and then you're about to throw them away, and it's like, oh wait, no, these are all clumpy. This is exactly what I need for when I do one of these projects. I made tiny little hood pins. I haven't finished this component of it. So again, it sat around for more than a decade in storage. And there's all those little details, like the hood right here, that I need to finish up. Again, the leading edge of the hood, that's where a lot of your rust starts, right? That's anybody who's lived in New England, or if you're down in Pennsylvania, upstate New York, if you're in Canada, you know what it looks like when these cars, they just rot out. The rust just kills them. And so we got this metallic sort of paint, kind of a scissor G green, as Chevy would call it, or a sublime green metallic. And then on top of it, that's the final layer, but underneath it you have all that paint, and so then you can go in and gouge and take out chunks. It's a process. The door was at one point, I believe, burgundy. I can't remember anymore. I started off with a different color, and I didn't like it. I kept redoing it, and this is a sloppy mess of what I finally ended up just giving up. I think it still looks pretty cool. So the fender is mismatched on this side. Should have done a better job on the pinstripe, because of course the pinstripe, as much as the car's crusty, would be straight. And I just sort of, to be honest, I did it by hand one day. It's just like, whatever, I'm gonna paint on a pinstripe on there. There's a reject sticker from Massachusetts over here on the corner. And one thing, here's a little detail. I'm going to finish off on this. Here's a little detail that you might have noticed in junkyards. Because the metal heats up a lot where the dome light is, if you look at the roof on a lot of old 50s, 60s cars where the dome light is, that part is rusted through or crusty, or the paint's peeling or whatever. And that's what I did there. So again, little God is in the details, right? So there you go, 71 Duster. Thanks for watching if you're one of the 3 people in the world who watched this whole video.